Well, not looking specifically at China, you did mention the spreading of the technology used to censor the internet. What's going to be, or what is becoming the bigger issue for, the bigger restriction for bloggers? Is it going to be this technology and the actual censorship by the states, or is it more going to be the traditional sort of the culture of fear or self-censorship that we've seen affect other forms of media in repressive regimes?
I think self-censorship is an issue. I mean, I spoke to a lot of people on my travels who often say that they often wouldn't like something because they just feared the risk of doing so. Before the games in the last few years, Naomi Klein, this Canadian writer who wrote Shock Doctrine amongst others and No Logo, has written a lot of stuff about how China has become the kind of laboratory for security technology. She sort of dubs it police state 2.0. So what is happening is that you have many major Western security firms, internet firms go to China. And before the games, the Beijing Games security cost $33 billion, allegedly, or did. The Athens security cost about half that. So the question really is, was there a massively greater security risk in Beijing? No. What the regime was doing by having Western multinationals help them with their censorship was to develop technology, including monitoring and cameras and amazing sophisticated technology to essentially monitor people's activities in China during the games. That stuff's not going to leave now the games are over. It's there permanently, which is what the regime wants. So now what we're going to see is in the next years, and we're seeing it now, these security firms who are exploiting this knowledge to other countries around the world, including to the US. There's no doubt that in the last 8 years there's been a massive expansion in America of a security state, undoubtedly so. And to me there's no evidence to suggest that even if Obama wins this year, which I don't think is a given at all, that's not going to change. There is no real interest of either major political party in America to change that. There is a belief that that is the way that you maintain a safe state. People, I think, often mistakenly believe the Bush administration was an anomaly. It's more extreme than other administrations before, but many of these ideas were developed far before Bush came into power. So I guess the answer to your question in a roundabout way is that I think in many countries censorship is increasing, imprisonment of bloggers is increasing. There's a realisation in many regimes that in fact, although it sounds weird in a way, they feel threatened by what is essentially a handful of people. In somewhere like Egypt, it's a minority of people who are causing trouble. It's not a majority. There is a lot of people who are pissed off with the regime. Most of them are not marching in the streets or writing on blogs. But there is a sense that these regimes actually are far weaker than people believe. Now, I'm not saying everyone wants a revolution to overthrow every regime. They don't. What I found constantly throughout my travels was that most people, virtue to a person, did not want revolution at all. The book's called The Blogging Revolution, I know. But it's more, I'm talking about technology rather than what people want politically. And my sense was that many people who I was speaking to want change in some way, and they want to go online to maybe talk about that and engage with people about it, but there's not really a belief that people want some kind of jolt or some kind of invasion or some kind of... And more often actually they often don't want Western help. Western help in their view means American intervention. And history of that ain't that good in Latin America, in the Middle East, in Asia. So I think there is a sense that what the web actually I think can create are people who are able to articulate a variety of ideologies which, with all the restrictions and the censorship that exist, that didn't exist before. So that's why I guess it's a weird thing. You ask them, what's going to happen next? I think all these kind of countries, what can happen more than anything else is that people in the West at least listen to what they have to say. Now, their aim in Tehran is not to have some guy in Melbourne care what they think, but I was amazed how many people felt they were being ignored or caricatured by what they saw as what they read in the New York Times online, or even The Guardian, or so-called left-wing newspapers too. But I do fear that, the censorship model of China is going to worsen, and that's going to be exported to other countries around the world. And unless I think there's a greater awareness of how to fight that, to me there should be a major area, the UN, for example, about this. Human rights groups are involved in this sort of issue, but it needs to happen a lot more. This is, to me, one of the key human rights issues now, mainly because of many countries where groups like Amnesty, for example, campaign. I suspect many countries you guys talk about, the sense of actually finding out what goes on will come from people who are writing online. Not only, but certainly partly. And often the people you guys are campaigning about are people who are in prison because they write online. So I think some Western human rights groups could be more aware of that. And just one last thing on that. What I guess I found also quite frustrating in the last looking at this book was how resistant many Western human rights groups, I'm not talking about Amnesty, I'm just saying in a general sense, how many Western human rights groups are often hesitant to campaign for the release or rights of people who are Islamists. In other words, 9/11 has had kind of a chilling, and I'm generalising, there are exceptions to this, but there's a response that many Western human rights groups feel uncomfortable campaigning for men and women who are Islamists, who often may be very anti-US or anti-Israel or whatever. Somehow they worry how that's going to be received in the West. And you see in Egypt, for example, that Human Rights Watch is an exception to this, but a lot of other Western human rights groups somehow remain silent when the Muslim Brotherhood, many of whom are bloggers, are arrested or imprisoned or tortured. And speaking to some people there, they got a sense that 9/11 has had a chilling effect on this, where a lot of groups feel, as I said, uncomfortable campaigning for them because they think they're going to be accused of defending terrorists or supporting terrorists. My view has always been, you believe in human rights for everybody, we don't believe in them at all. I mean, you can't sort of pick and choose, who's in trouble and who's not. I mean, the fact is if you're in jail for your political beliefs, that's a problem. So that's something that really struck me in a place like Egypt especially, and in Iran as well.